I've never been the type to believe in the supernatural or any of that paranormal nonsense. I'm a skeptic by nature, always the one to debunk ghost stories and laugh off conspiracy theories. That was until last month when I decided to venture into the dark web out of sheer curiosity. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. This is my story. I stumbled upon this subreddit where people were discussing the weirdest stuff they found on the dark web. Most of it was the usual urban legend material. Hitmen for hire, illegal drug markets, bizarre cults, you name it. But one thread caught my eye, a post about an app that was supposedly a gateway to some hidden truths. The comments were a mix of people calling it BS, and others swearing it had changed their lives, though not for the better. My curiosity got the better of me. I'm pretty tech savvy, so finding the app wasn't too hard. It was called Veil Breaker. The icon was just a plain black square, completely nondescript. I downloaded it onto an old phone I had lying around, thinking it would be safer than using my main device. Once installed, the app asked for some pretty invasive permissions. Camera, microphone, location, you name it. It even wanted access to my contacts, which I denied. That should have been the first red flag, but I was too intrigued to care. When I opened the app, it was just a blank screen with a single button that said, "Unlock the truth." I pressed it, expecting some kind of jump scare or a troll message. Instead, my phone screen went black, and then the weirdest thing happened. The camera turned on by itself, and a live feed of my own face appeared on the screen. Then, words started appearing over my image, like someone was typing them in real time. "Are you ready to see?" I'll admit, I was freaked out, but also weirdly fascinated. I typed back, "See what?" The response came almost instantly. Everything. I was about to type another response when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Welcome to the other side." The body of the email contained a single link. I hesitated for a moment, but then clicked on it. It led to a live video feed of what looked like a basement. The lighting was poor, but I could make out a chair in the middle of the room and some kind of dark stain on the floor. I was about to close the link when a figure stepped into view, wearing a mask that looked like a distorted human face. The figure spoke in a distorted voice. "You've been chosen to see the truth. Watch closely." Then, to my horror, they dragged someone into the frame. The person was bound and gagged, struggling against their restraints. The masked figure pulled out a knife and, without any hesitation, started cutting into the victim. I could hear the muffled screams, see the blood splatter. It was real. Too real. I closed the video and threw my phone across the room, shaking. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that room, that mask, and those helpless eyes staring at me. I deleted the app, did a factory reset on the phone, and even considered destroying it altogether. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. I thought that things couldn't get worse after that night, but I was wrong. So very wrong. It's been a few weeks since I posted part 1, and I can barely remember what normal life feels like. I'm sharing this update because I need to document everything, in case something happens to me. Here's what's been going on. After the masked figure broke into my apartment, I started getting more serious about my safety. I upgraded my security system, added more cameras, and even installed motion detectors. I also moved to a different apartment, hoping it would throw off whoever was stalking me. But it didn't help. I first noticed the change when I was out grocery shopping. I had this feeling that someone was watching me. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, I'd catch a glimpse of the same man in a dark hoodie, pretending to browse the aisles. He was always there, always just out of reach. I tried to confront him once, but he vanished into the crowd before I could get close. That night, I reviewed the footage from my new apartment's cameras. To my horror, I saw the hooded man standing in the hallway outside my door for hours, just standing there, staring at my door. At 3 a.m., he walked away, but not before leaving something on my doorstep. When I checked in the morning, there was a small black envelope with no markings. Inside, I found a single USB drive. I debated with myself for hours before plugging it into my laptop. Part of me was terrified of what I might find, but another part of me needed answers. The drive contained a single video file. With trembling hands, I clicked play. The video was grainy, like it had been recorded on an old camera. It showed a dimly lit room, much like the basement from the first video. In the center was another bound and gagged person, this time a woman. The camera zoomed in on her face, and I nearly vomited when I realized she was mouthing my name. The masked figure appeared again, holding a piece of paper with today's date written on it. He pointed to the woman and then to the camera, as if to say, "This is for you." I slammed my laptop shut and broke down in tears. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I felt utterly helpless, caught in some sick game. But it didn't end there. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and sleepless nights. I kept seeing the hooded man everywhere I went, outside my work, near my friends' houses, even at a cafe where I tried to get some peace. I started avoiding people, afraid that whoever was behind this would hurt them too. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone else suffering because of me. Then, last night, things took a turn for the worse. I woke up to the sound of my bedroom window creaking open. I froze, barely breathing, and listened. There were soft, deliberate footsteps in my apartment. I grabbed my knife from under my pillow and crept towards the noise. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would give me away. In the living room, I saw two figures. One was the hooded man, and the other was the masked figure from the videos. They were standing over my laptop, whispering to each other. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but their presence alone was enough to paralyze me with fear. I must have made a noise because they suddenly turned towards me. In a panic, I lunged with my knife, but they were faster. The hooded man grabbed my arm and twisted it until I dropped the knife, then shoved me to the floor. I tried to scream, but the masked figure covered my mouth with a gloved hand. "We warned you," the masked figure hissed. "Stop digging, or you'll see more than just the truth." They knocked me out cold, and when I came to, they were gone. My laptop was missing, along with all the security footage. The only thing they left behind was another Polaroid, this time of the hooded man standing over my unconscious body, holding my knife. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every little noise. I've tried going to the police again, but they think I'm making it all up, or worse, that I'm doing it to myself. My friends are worried, but they can't help me. I'm alone in this nightmare. Every night I dread going to sleep, afraid of what might happen. And every day, I fear what I might find when I wake up. I don't know who these people are or what they want, but I'm starting to think there's no escape. They've made it clear that they're always watching, always waiting. I'm sharing this because I need to keep a record. If anything happens to me, maybe someone will find these posts and understand what's going on. Maybe they can stop it. But for now, I have to keep moving, keep hiding, and hope that somehow I can outlast this nightmare. Please, if you have any advice or if you know anything about this app or these people, help me. I don't know how much longer I can survive like this. After the break-in and the attack, I knew I couldn't stay in my apartment any longer. I packed a bag with essentials and got out of there, heading to a cheap motel on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it had a lock on the door, and I needed some semblance of safety, even if it was just an illusion. I spent the first night at the motel glued to the window, watching for any sign of the hooded man or the masked figure. Every creak, every rustle of leaves outside sent my heart racing. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I knew I had to take action. I couldn't just hide forever. I needed to understand what was happening and why these people were targeting me. I started by searching for any information about the app, Veilbreaker. The dark web was a labyrinth, but I managed to find a forum where users discussed it. Most of the posts were vague, filled with ominous warnings and cryptic messages. But one thread stood out. A user claimed to have found a way to track down the origins of the app. I messaged him, hoping for a response. Days passed without a reply, and my paranoia grew. Every time I left the motel room, I felt eyes on me. One night, while grabbing takeout, I saw the hooded man again, standing under a streetlight across the parking lot. He didn't move, just watched, as I hurried back to my room. That night, I pushed a dresser against the door and slept with the knife in my hand. Finally, the user replied. His message was terse. "Meet me, tomorrow, midnight, old factory on 5th and Oak." It was risky, but I had no other options. I arrived at the factory early, hiding in the shadows and scanning the area. At midnight, a man in a leather jacket appeared. He was scruffy, looked like he hadn't slept in days. He beckoned me over. "You the one asking about Veilbreaker?" he asked. I nodded. "You're in deep shit, man. That app, it's not just a game or a prank. It's a gateway. A gateway to what?" I demanded. He glanced around nervously. To a network. A twisted underground network of people who enjoy the darkest parts of human nature. Kidnappers, torturers, killers. They use the app to find people like you, curious but naive, and they drag you into their world. My blood ran cold. Why me? I didn't do anything. It's not about what you did. It's about what you saw. You saw too much, and now they're playing with you. They won't stop until they break you, or worse. I felt a surge of anger. Then how do I stop them? How do I make this end? He shook his head. There's no easy way out. But there might be someone who can help. She's a hacker, knows the dark web better than anyone, goes by the name Nightshade. Find her, and maybe you have a chance. I thanked him and turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Be careful. They're always watching. As I walked back to the motel, I felt a mix of hope and fear. Nightshade was my only lead, but finding her would be a challenge. I spent the next few days scouring forums, chat rooms, and encrypted networks, searching for any mention of her. My food supply dwindled, and I barely left the room, afraid of being seen. Finally, I found a lead, a hidden chat room where Nightshade was rumored to appear. I joined, using an alias, and waited. Hours turned into days, and just when I was about to give up, a new user entered the chat, Nightshade. I sent her a private message, explaining my situation and begging for help. Her response was swift. Meet me, tomorrow, abandoned church on Pine Street, 2 a.m., come alone. It felt like a trap, but I had no choice. That night, I arrived at the church, heart pounding. Inside, it was dark and eerily silent. I crept through the halls until I saw a figure sitting in the front pew, a laptop glowing in front of them. Your Nightshade? I asked. The figure turned. It was a woman, late 20s, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through me. You've caused quite a stir, she said, but I can help you. Why? I asked, suspicious. What's in it for you? Let's just say I don't like bullies, she replied, smirking. Now, tell me everything. Over the next few hours, I poured out my story. She listened intently, typing furiously on her laptop. They're using your phone's metadata to track you, she said finally. We need to cut you off from their network and create a new identity for you. She handed me a burner phone. Use this from now on. I'll set up a new digital footprint for you, but you need to stay off the grid for a while. No social media, no credit cards, nothing that can be traced back to you. It was a daunting task, but I agreed. Nightshade worked her magic, and soon I had a new identity. But as I left the church, she grabbed my arm. Remember, they won't stop. You need to be ready for anything. With my new identity, I moved to a different city, hoping to start fresh. But the paranoia never left. Every knock on the door, every stranger on the street could be them. The hooded man and the masked figure haunted my dreams. I don't know if I'll ever be free of this nightmare, but I'm still fighting. If you're reading this, stay away from the dark web. Don't make the same mistake I did. And if you see someone watching you, run. Because once they have their eyes on you, there's no escape. Moving to a new city was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to leave the horrors behind. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't over. The hooded man, the masked figure, and the unseen watchers, they were still out there, somewhere. I did everything Nightshade told me. No social media, no credit cards, nothing traceable. But paranoia became my constant companion. I found a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It was in a rundown building with creaky floors and thin walls, but it felt safer than my old place. I kept to myself, avoiding neighbors and staying indoors as much as possible. I even started working from home, freelancing to keep a low profile. Despite my precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I went out, I felt eyes on me. One day, while walking to the corner store, I noticed a car that seemed to be following me. It was a beat-up sedan with tinted windows, driving slowly, always keeping a safe distance. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to my paranoia, but deep down, I knew it was them. That night, I reviewed the footage from my security cameras. At around 3 a.m., I saw the same sedan parked across the street from my building. A figure got out and walked towards my apartment, stopping just short of the entrance. They stood there for a few minutes, staring up at my window, then got back in the car and drove off. My heart pounded as I watched the footage on repeat, trying to make out any details of the figure, but it was too dark. The next day, I contacted Nightshade. She was my lifeline, the only person who could help me now. I told her about the car and the figure, and she agreed to come to my apartment to help secure it further. When she arrived, she brought a small bag of gadgets and immediately set to work, installing more cameras and setting up a more advanced security system. "You can't let your guard down," she said, her eyes serious. "These people are relentless." As she worked, we talked more about Veilbreaker and the network behind it. "It's not just an app," she explained. "It's a tool for recruitment and surveillance. They lure people in, find those who are curious or vulnerable, and then they exploit them. You're not the first, and you won't be the last." I shuddered at the thought. "Why me, though? What do they want from me?" "They want to break you," she said bluntly. "It's a game to them. They get off on the fear, the control, and if they can use you to get to others, they will." We finished the installation, and Nightshade left, leaving me with a sense of temporary relief. But that night, the real horror began. I woke up to the sound of static, a low, buzzing noise that seemed to fill the entire apartment. I got out of bed and followed the noise to the living room, where my TV had turned on by itself, showing nothing but static. As I reached for the remote to turn it off, the screen flickered and an image appeared. It was a live feed of me, standing in my living room, looking terrified. I dropped the remote, my blood running cold. The camera zoomed in on my face, and then the masked figure appeared on the screen. "We warned you," the distorted voice said, "but you didn't listen." The screen went black, and the static noise stopped. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Then, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're not alone." Panic set in. I grabbed my knife and checked every room, every closet, but I was alone. Or so I thought. The next morning, I found another Polaroid on my kitchen counter. This one showed me sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my apartment. They had been here, watching me, and I hadn't even known it. Desperation clawed at my sanity. I contacted Nightshade again, begging for help. She agreed to meet me in person at a cafe downtown. It was risky, but I had no other options. When I arrived, I saw her sitting in a corner booth, looking around nervously. "You need to leave the city," she said as soon as I sat down. "They've found you again. They won't stop until they get what they want." "But where can I go?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They'll find me no matter where I run." "There's one place," she said, leaning in closer. "An old safe house, off the grid. It's not much, but it's secure. I can take you there." With no other choice, I agreed. We left the cafe together, keeping an eye out for any signs of the hooded man, or the sedan. Nightshade drove us out of the city, down a series of winding, deserted roads, until we reached an old cabin in the woods. It was isolated, surrounded by trees, with no signs of civilization nearby. "This is it," she said, pulling a key from her pocket. "Stay here, stay hidden, and don't trust anyone." As I settled into the cabin, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. It was a temporary sanctuary, but I knew it wouldn't last. Nightshade left me with a burner phone and a promise to check in regularly. For a few days, things were quiet. I almost started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could escape this nightmare. But then, the messages started again. The burner phone buzzed with a text. "We know where you are." I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. I checked the cameras Nightshade had set up around the cabin. At first, everything seemed normal, but then, in the distance I saw movement, a figure, partially hidden by the trees, slowly making their way towards the cabin. My heart pounded as I watched them approach, their face obscured by a hood. It was the hooded man, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, more figures emerged, all wearing masks, moving silently through the forest like ghosts. I knew I couldn't stay. Grabbing the knife and the burner phone, I fled out the back door, disappearing into the woods. I ran, branches scratching my face, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving, keep running. Eventually, I found an old abandoned shack. It was barely standing, but it offered some cover. I hid inside, trying to catch my breath, listening for any signs of pursuit. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound my pounding heart. I don't know how long I can keep this up. They're closing in, and I'm running out of places to hide. If anyone out there has any advice, any way to help, please, I'm begging you. I don't know how much longer I can survive. I'm writing this from a borrowed laptop in a coffee shop miles away from where I last hid. I've been running nonstop, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. This might be the last part of my story. If you're reading this, I hope it serves as a warning. Don't make the same mistakes I did. After I hid in the shack, I stayed there for a few hours, waiting for the figures to pass. They never did. Instead, I heard footsteps around the perimeter, soft whispers and the occasional snap of a twig. They were out there, waiting for me to make a move. My phone buzzed with a message. "We're coming." Desperation drove me to make a plan. I couldn't stay in the shack forever, and I couldn't keep running blindly. I needed a way to fight back. Nightshade had given me the tools, and I was going to use them. I used the burner phone to contact her, typing out a quick, frantic message. "They've found me. I need help. Now." Her response was immediate. "Hang tight. I'm on my way." Hours felt like days as I waited. The sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees. Every creak of the old shack, every rustle of leaves outside made my heart race. Then I heard it, the low hum of a car engine. I peered out and saw Nightshade's car approaching, headlights off. She parked a distance away and made her way to the shack, moving silently. "Are you okay?" she asked, her face serious. "Not really," I replied. "They're close." She nodded, her expression grim. "We need to end this. I have a plan, but it's risky. Are you in?" I didn't hesitate. Anything to make this stop. Nightshade explained the plan as we drove. She had traced the origins of Veilbreaker to a location not far from here, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of a small town. "That's their base," she said. "If we can get inside and destroy their servers, we can cut off their network." "Just the two of us?" I asked, feeling a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. "We don't have a choice," she replied, "but I've got some tricks up my sleeve." We arrived at the warehouse just after midnight. It was an imposing structure, surrounded by a high fence and guarded by cameras. Nightshade handed me a small device. "This will jam their cameras for a few minutes, enough time for us to get inside." I nodded, my hands shaking as I activated the device. We moved quickly, scaling the fence and slipping into the shadows. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of corridors and rooms, filled with old machinery and flickering lights. The air was thick with the smell of oil and rust. Nightshade led the way, her movements precise and calculated. We reached a door marked Server Room, and paused. "This is it," she whispered. "Once we're in, we need to move fast, destroy everything." I took a deep breath and nodded. We burst into the room, Nightshade immediately setting to work on the servers. I grabbed a metal pipe and started smashing equipment, the sound of destruction echoing through the empty halls. For a moment, it felt like we might actually succeed. Then, the lights flickered and the door slammed shut behind us. I turned to see the masked figure standing there, flanked by the hooded man and several others, all wearing the same distorted masks. "You really thought you could escape?" the masked figure said, his voice a low, mocking drawl. "This is our game, and you're just a pawn." Panic surged through me, but Nightshade stood her ground. "We're not afraid of you," she spat, her hands still working furiously at the server controls. The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You should be." Before I could react, the hooded man lunged at me. We struggled, the pipe slipping from my grasp. He was strong, his hands closing around my throat, cutting off my air. I clawed at his face, his mask, desperate for any leverage. Just as my vision started to darken, Nightshade swung a broken server part, hitting the hooded man in the head. He crumpled to the floor. "We have to go, now!" she shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me towards a side door. We ran, the sound of pursuit close behind. The warehouse was a blur, corridors blending together as we searched for an exit. Finally, we burst through a fire escape door and into the night. Nightshade's car was waiting, engine running. We dove in, and she floored it, the tires screeching as we sped away. I looked back to see the masked figures standing in the doorway, watching us disappear into the darkness. We drove in silence for a while, both of us too shaken to speak. Eventually, Nightshade broke the silence. "We did it. Their network is down. They can't track you anymore." I nodded, too exhausted to feel any relief. "But they're still out there." She glanced at me, her expression softening. "I know, but you're free now. They'll have to find a new game." We parted ways at the edge of town, Nightshade gave me another burner phone and a new identity. "Take care of yourself," she said, her voice heavy with fatigue. "And if you ever need help, you know how to find me." I thanked her and watched as she drove away, disappearing into the night. I don't know what's next for me. I've lost everything, my home, my job, my sense of security, but I'm alive, and for now, that's enough. If you're reading this, take my story as a warning. Curiosity can be dangerous. The dark web is not a place for games or experiments. There are real monsters out there, hiding behind screens and masks, waiting for someone to make a wrong move. I'm signing off now. Maybe someday I'll find peace, but for now, I'll keep moving, keep hiding, and hope that I can finally leave this nightmare behind. Goodbye, and stay safe. Alright, so I know this is going to sound completely insane, but please just hear me out. I'm not one for posting on Reddit, but I need to get this off my chest, and I don't know where else to turn. This all started about 3 months ago, and it's been a living nightmare ever since. So, like many curious idiots out there, I decided to explore the dark web. I'd heard all the horror stories about it, but thought, what the hell, I'm not gonna buy drugs or hire a hitman, I just want to see what's out there. Stupid, I know, but curiosity got the better of me. I fired up my Tor browser and began my descent into the abyss. At first, it was just as you'd expect. Dodgy marketplaces, weird forums, and a lot of creepy stuff that I won't even get into. I was about to call it a night when I stumbled upon a link titled Mirror Image. It had no description, just that eerie title, but something compelled me to click on it. The website was incredibly basic. It had a black background with a single box in the center that asked for your photo. "Upload a clear image of your face," it said. I was hesitant, but I figured it was some sort of AI project, maybe a weird facial recognition thing. So, I did it. I uploaded a selfie I had on my laptop. What happened next still haunts me. The screen went black for a moment, and then a picture appeared. It was a photo of me, but not just any photo. It was me sitting at my desk, in my room, in real time. I was staring at my screen in shock, but the person in the image, my exact duplicate, was smiling back at me. I freaked out and closed the browser immediately, but the damage was already done. The image of my smiling doppelganger was burned into my mind. It was as if I was looking into a mirror that reflected not my current emotions, but something sinister, something with a mind of its own. The next few days were a blur. I tried to put the incident behind me, convincing myself it was some elaborate prank. Maybe a hacker somehow accessed my webcam, right? But things got worse. Much worse. It started with little things. I'd come home to find items in my apartment moved around. My coffee mug, which I always left on the counter, would be in the sink. My bed, which I meticulously made every morning, would be unmade. I lived alone, and nobody else had a key to my place. Then I started getting messages on my phone. The first one simply said, "Nice to meet you." It came from an unknown number. I replied, asking who it was, but got no response. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. They were always vague, just enough to creep me out. "I see you," one read. Another said, "You look tired today." I contacted my phone provider, but they couldn't trace the number. I even went to the police, but they brushed it off as a prank. My friends thought I was losing my mind, and honestly, I was starting to believe them. One night, I decided to set up a camera in my apartment, hoping to catch whatever was happening. I placed it in my living room, facing the front door, and went to bed. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. What I saw made my blood run cold. Around 3 a.m., the front door slowly creaked open, and in walked someone who looked exactly like me. He moved with a strange fluidity, almost like he was gliding. He turned to face the camera, and that same sinister smile spread across his face. He stood there, just smiling at the camera, for a full minute before walking out of frame. A moment later, he returned, carrying my coffee mug, which he placed in the sink. Then he walked into my bedroom. The footage ended there. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. This thing, this doppelganger, was in my home, living my life. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go to the police again. They'd think I was crazy. I couldn't tell my friends. They already thought I was losing it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I stayed up that night, hiding in my closet with a baseball bat, hoping to confront this intruder. Around 3 a.m., I heard the front door creak open. My heart pounded in my chest as I peeked through the closet door. There he was, my exact double, standing in the living room, smiling. He moved towards the camera, just like before, but this time, he turned and looked directly at me, as if he knew I was there. "Come out," he said, his voice a perfect mimicry of mine. "I know you're watching." I stayed hidden, too terrified to move. He stood there for what felt like hours, just staring at the closet door, that smile never fading. Finally, he turned and left the apartment, leaving the door wide open. I don't know what's happening or who this doppelganger is. All I know is that he's not just a reflection. He's something else, something evil. And he's out there living my life while I'm trapped in this nightmare. After that night, I was too scared to stay in my apartment. I packed a bag and went to crash at my friend Dave's place. He was skeptical when I told him the story, but he could see the fear in my eyes. Reluctantly, he agreed to let me stay for a few days while I figured things out. The first night at Dave's was the first time I'd felt somewhat safe in weeks. I didn't sleep much, but at least I didn't feel like I was being watched. The next morning, I decided to do some research on doppelgangers and the dark web. I spent hours combing through forums and message boards, looking for anything that might explain what was happening to me. Most of what I found was just folklore, stories about evil twins and alternate realities. But one post caught my eye. It was buried deep in a thread about paranormal experiences. The user, who went by the name The Looking Glass, claimed to have encountered something similar. They described finding a website on the dark web that showed a real-time image of themselves, just like I had. According to them, the doppelganger was a manifestation of some kind of malevolent entity that could take over a person's life. The Looking Glass warned that once the doppelganger appeared, it was almost impossible to get rid of. They mentioned strange occurrences, much like mine, where the doppelganger would gradually replace the original person's life. The post ended abruptly with a final, chilling message. If you see your doppelganger, it's already too late. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Was it really too late for me? I tried to contact the Looking Glass, but their account had been deleted. Desperation was setting in. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't go back to my apartment, not while that thing was out there. The next day, I went to check on my place, hoping to grab some more clothes and essentials. Dave came with me, insisting I shouldn't go alone. As soon as we walked in, I knew something was wrong. The apartment felt different, colder somehow. We walked through the rooms, and everything seemed untouched, but there was an eerie stillness in the air. Then we found the note. It was lying on my kitchen counter, written in my handwriting. "You can't hide from yourself," it read. Dave looked at me, his face pale. "This is messed up, man," he said. "We need to figure out what's going on." We decided to leave, but as we were heading to the door, we heard footsteps coming from the hallway. My heart stopped. We turned to see my doppelganger standing there, blocking our way out. He looked just like me, but there was something off about him, something inhuman. His eyes were dark and hollow, and that same sinister smile was plastered on his face. Dave stepped forward, trying to confront him, but the doppelganger moved faster than I could have imagined. He grabbed Dave by the throat and lifted him off the ground with one hand, all while staring directly at me. "You can't escape me," he said. In my voice, but with a chilling, almost mechanical tone. I froze, unable to move or speak. The doppelganger tossed Dave aside like he was nothing, sending him crashing into the wall. I snapped out of my trance and ran to Dave, who was unconscious but breathing. I turned back to the doppelganger, but he was gone. The front door was wide open, and there was no sign of him anywhere. We called an ambulance for Dave. He had a concussion and a few broken ribs, but he was going to be okay. I stayed by his side at the hospital, feeling more lost and scared than ever. How was I supposed to fight something that looked exactly like me, but was stronger and faster? After Dave was discharged, he insisted I stay with him. He was a good friend, better than I deserved, but even he couldn't understand the full extent of what I was dealing with. I was terrified that the doppelganger would come after him again, or worse, go after someone else I cared about. Then, the emails started. They came from my own email address, sent to everyone in my contact list. The messages were bizarre and disturbing, full of cryptic threats and horrifying images of mutilated bodies. Friends and family started calling me, asking what was wrong with me, why I was sending these things. I tried to explain, but nobody believed me. They thought I was having some kind of breakdown. I knew it was the doppelganger. He was trying to isolate me, to make everyone think I was losing my mind. And it was working. I could see the doubt in Dave's eyes, even though he tried to hide it. He was scared of me, scared of what I might do. One night, I woke up to find my laptop open on the desk. The screen was glowing, displaying that same website from the dark web. The upload box was there, but this time, there was a video feed. It showed my bedroom with me lying in bed, and then slowly, the camera panned over to the closet. My heart pounded as I watched the live feed. The closet door creaked open, and there he was, my doppelganger, standing inside. He stepped out, moving towards the bed, towards me. I looked around the room, but he wasn't there. It was just me and the screen, showing me a reality that shouldn't exist. I shut the laptop and backed away, feeling like I was losing my grip on reality. I didn't know what was real anymore. I felt like I was being watched all the time, like he was always there, just out of sight. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I'm losing my mind, and I don't know how to stop it. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle against something I can't understand, something that's slowly taking over my life. If anyone out there knows what to do, please, I'm begging you, help me. This thing, this doppelganger, is real, and it's not going to stop until it takes everything from me. I spent the next few days in a state of constant paranoia. Every noise, every shadow, every unfamiliar face on the street felt like a potential threat. I barely ate or slept. My mind was unraveling, and I could feel it. Dave tried to help, but I could see the strain it was putting on him. He had his own life to worry about, and my presence was a burden he didn't deserve. One night, after another sleepless evening, I decided I needed answers. The looking glass had mentioned the dark website, and there had to be something more there. I set up a new laptop, making sure it wasn't connected to anything that could be traced back to me, and fired up the Tor browser once more. Navigating back to the mirror image site was easier than I thought, almost like it wanted me to find it again. The same black screen and upload box greeted me, but this time I hesitated. I didn't want to upload another photo of myself, but what choice did I have? Instead of a photo, I typed a message into the box. "What do you want from me?" I hit enter and waited. The screen went black again, and then slowly, text began to appear. "I want what you have," it read. "I want your life." My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to type another message, but the screen changed before I could. A new image appeared, one that made my blood run cold. It was a live feed of Dave's apartment. He was sitting on the couch, watching TV, completely unaware of the camera watching him. The doppelganger was there too, standing just outside the frame, watching him with that same sinister smile. I screamed at the screen, slamming the laptop shut. I grabbed my phone and called Dave, my hands shaking. He answered on the third ring, sounding groggy. "What's up, man?" "Dave, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to get out of the apartment, now. He's there, the doppelganger. He's watching you." There was a pause, and then Dave laughed nervously. "Dude, you're freaking me out. What are you talking about?" "I'm serious, Dave. Get out. Go to a hotel. Go anywhere. Just don't stay there." All right, I'm going," he said, finally sensing the urgency in my voice. "Calm down. I'm leaving." I stayed on the line, listening as he gathered his things and left the apartment. He kept talking, trying to reassure me, but I could hear the fear in his voice. He knew something was wrong, even if he didn't fully understand it. After he left, I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was losing control, like this doppelganger was playing a game that I couldn't win. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone, jumping at every little sound. Then, around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new message. It was a photo, sent from an unknown number. I opened it, my heart sinking. It was a picture of me, asleep in Dave's bed. I wasn't at his apartment, I was still at mine. But there I was, lying in his bed, peaceful and oblivious. Another message came through. "You can't hide from yourself." I threw my phone across the room, feeling a surge of anger and fear. This thing was taunting me, pushing me to the edge. I needed help, real help, from someone who could understand what was happening. I decided to visit an old friend, someone who had dabbled in the occult and paranormal. His name was Marcus, and he had a reputation for being a bit eccentric, but if anyone could help, it was him. The next morning, I made my way to Marcus's place. It was a small, cluttered apartment filled with strange artifacts and books on the supernatural. Marcus greeted me at the door, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Man, you look like you've seen a ghost," he said, ushering me inside. "What's going on?" I told him everything, from the website to the doppelganger, to the messages and the photos. He listened intently, not interrupting once. When I finished, he sat back and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "This is heavy stuff, man," he said finally. "I've heard of doppelgangers, but this sounds different. It sounds like some kind of entity trying to replace you." "What do I do?" I asked, desperation in my voice. "How do I stop it?" Marcus stood up and started rummaging through his bookshelves. "There might be a way," he said, "but it's risky. If this thing is feeding off your life, you need to cut off its access. That means breaking any connection it has to you." He pulled out a dusty old book and flipped through the pages. "There's a ritual," he said, "that might work. It's meant to sever ties between you and any malevolent entities, but it's dangerous and it has to be done perfectly, or it could backfire." I didn't care about the risks, I just wanted my life back. "Let's do it," I said. Marcus nodded and started gathering supplies. Candles, salt, and some herbs I couldn't identify. He explained that we needed to create a protective circle and chant a specific incantation to banish the doppelganger. The ritual had to be done at midnight, when the veil between worlds was thinnest. That night, we prepared everything in Marcus's apartment. The air was thick with tension. As we lit the candles and drew the circle, Marcus handed me a piece of paper with the incantation written on it. "Whatever happens, don't step out of the circle," he warned. "No matter what you see or hear, stay inside." I nodded, my heart pounding. We began the chant, our voices low and steady. At first, nothing happened. But then the room grew colder, and the candles flickered. A low, growling sound filled the air, and I felt a presence watching us. The doppelganger appeared in the corner of the room, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. He stepped towards the circle, but couldn't cross the boundary. He snarled, his face contorted with rage. "You think this will stop me?" he hissed, his voice distorted and inhuman. "You can't get rid of me. I am you." I kept chanting, my voice trembling but determined. The doppelganger's form began to waver, as if he was struggling to maintain his shape. He reached out a hand, trying to breach the circle, but the protective barrier held. With one final, blood-curdling scream, the doppelganger dissolved into a cloud of smoke and vanished. The room grew silent, the oppressive presence lifting. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. Marcus helped me up, his face grim. "It's not over," he said. "The ritual worked, but the connection isn't fully severed. You need to stay vigilant. This thing will try to find another way back in." I nodded, grateful but still scared. At least for now, I had a fighting chance. But deep down, I knew the battle was far from over. The doppelganger was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And I had to be ready for whatever came next. I stayed at Marcus's place for a few days after the ritual, too afraid to return to my apartment. Marcus was cautious, warning me that although the ritual had worked, the doppelganger was still out there, weakened but not destroyed. He suggested that I should avoid going back to my old routine and remain vigilant for any signs of its return. Life at Marcus's was strange but comforting. His apartment was filled with oddities and charms, each one supposedly warding off various malevolent spirits. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, but Marcus assured me that his place was protected. One night, while Marcus was out gathering more supplies, I decided to look into the dark website again. I needed to understand more about what I was dealing with. I booted up Marcus's old computer, making sure to use his secure network, and navigated back to the mirror image site. This time, there was a new prompt. "Do you wish to proceed?" It felt like the site was taunting me, daring me to delve deeper. Against my better judgment, I clicked yes. The screen flashed, and then displayed a series of images. Different faces, all staring back at me. They were all doppelgangers of various people, each one more disturbing than the last. Their eyes were hollow, their smiles twisted. Among them, I spotted my own face, my own twisted smile. A chat box popped up at the bottom of the screen. A message appeared. "Hello again." I typed back, my fingers trembling. "What do you want?" The reply was almost immediate. To live. To take what you have. I felt a surge of anger. You can't have my life. I won't let you. There was a pause, and then another message. We shall see. The screen went black, and then another image appeared. It was a live feed of Marcus's apartment, taken from a camera I hadn't noticed before. The view was from the living room, showing the front door. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the door slowly creak open. I turned around, but there was no one there. The door was closed, just as we had left it. I looked back at the screen, and the image was gone. It had been a warning. I shut down the computer, feeling more paranoid than ever. When Marcus returned, I told him what had happened. He was concerned, but not surprised. The entity is trying to intimidate you, he said. It's weak, but it's not gone. We need to find a way to destroy it completely. Over the next few days, Marcus and I researched every possible method to permanently get rid of the doppelganger. We delved into ancient texts, obscure rituals, and modern theories on parallel dimensions. Nothing seemed like a sure solution. Then, one night, Marcus came to me with an idea. There's a place, he said, an old abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. It's said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. If we can lure the doppelganger there, we might be able to trap it. The idea of going to an abandoned asylum was terrifying, but at this point, I was willing to try anything. We gathered our supplies and headed out that night, driving through the dark, winding roads until we reached the decrepit building. The asylum loomed in the moonlight, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. It looked like something out of a horror movie. We parked the car and made our way inside, the air thick with dust and the smell of decay. Marcus led us to the main hall, where we set up our protective circle and began the ritual. He instructed me to stand in the center while he performed the incantations. The atmosphere grew tense as he chanted, the shadows around us seeming to move and flicker. Suddenly the temperature dropped, and a cold wind swept through the hall. The doppelganger appeared at the edge of the circle, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It looked more feral, more desperate than before. "You cannot banish me," it hissed, its voice a distorted version of mine. "I am you." I stood my ground, focusing on the words Marcus had taught me. The doppelganger lunged at the circle, but was repelled by an invisible barrier. It screamed in frustration, its form flickering and distorting. Marcus continued chanting, his voice growing louder and more forceful. The doppelganger clawed at the barrier, its eyes filled with rage and desperation. I felt a surge of power within the circle, like an invisible force pushing back against the entity. With a final, ear-piercing scream, the doppelganger was sucked into the center of the circle. It writhed and twisted, its form breaking apart like smoke caught in a vortex. And then, with a blinding flash of light, it was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. Marcus helped me up, his face pale but triumphant. "It's over," he said, though I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. At least, I hope it is. We left the asylum, the weight of the ordeal lifting but still lingering. Back at Marcus's apartment, I tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. Days turned into weeks, and I began to believe that the doppelganger was truly gone. But the scars it left behind, both physical and mental, were deep. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond my sight. I started seeing a therapist, trying to piece my life back together, to regain a sense of normalcy. Then, one night, I received a package. There was no return address, just my name scrawled on the front in messy handwriting. I opened it, my heart pounding. Inside was a single item, a photograph. It was a picture of me, standing in the protective circle at the asylum, but something was off. In the background, barely visible, was a shadowy figure, watching from the darkness. I dropped the photo, feeling a chill run down my spine. It wasn't over. The doppelganger was still out there, somewhere, waiting for another chance to strike. And this time, I didn't know if I'd be able to stop it. After receiving that photograph, I was plunged back into a state of paranoia and fear. The knowledge that the doppelganger was still out there gnawed at me. I couldn't focus, I couldn't sleep, and I felt like I was constantly being watched. Every noise, every shadow sent my heart racing. Marcus suggested that I move to a different city, start fresh somewhere new. It seemed like a good idea, but deep down, I knew it was only a temporary solution. The doppelganger had found me once. It could find me again. Still, with no better options, I packed up what little I had and left for a city a few hours away. The first few weeks in my new apartment were uneventful. I kept to myself, avoided making new friends, and tried to stay under the radar. I installed security cameras and even adopted a dog, hoping its presence would help me feel safer. For a while it worked. I began to think that maybe, just maybe, I could outrun this nightmare. But then, one night, the dog started barking at something outside. It was around 3 a.m., the same time the doppelganger had always appeared. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously approached the window. The street outside was empty, but the dog wouldn't stop barking, staring intently at the front door. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I checked the security cameras, but they showed nothing unusual. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I tried to calm the dog, but it kept barking, more frantically now. And then the front door creaked open, just a crack. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed a baseball bat and slowly approached the door. I flung it open, ready to confront whatever was out there, but there was nothing. The hallway was empty, silent. I stepped outside, shining the flashlight around, but saw no signs of anyone. I went back inside, locking the door behind me and double-checking all the windows. The dog had stopped barking and was now whimpering in a corner. The next morning, I reviewed the security footage. At 3 a.m., the front door had opened on its own, just as I remembered. But before that, at around 2:55 a.m., there was a brief glitch in the feed, just a few seconds of static. When the video resumed, the door was ajar. I knew it was a sign. The doppelganger was getting closer, somehow manipulating reality to reach me. I called Marcus, desperate for advice. He listened, his tone grave. "There's one last thing we can try," he said. "It's risky, but it might be our only shot. We need to confront the doppelganger head-on, force it to reveal itself, and then trap it for good." Marcus explained that we would need to lure the doppelganger into a confined space, a place where we could control the environment. He suggested an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place he had used for rituals before. We gathered our supplies and headed there that night. The warehouse was dark and foreboding, filled with shadows and the scent of decay. We set up a circle of salt in the center, placing candles and protective talismans around the perimeter. Marcus explained that the salt would act as a barrier, untrapping the doppelganger once it entered. At midnight, we began the ritual. Marcus chanted in a low, rhythmic tone, while I stood in the center of the circle, holding a mirror. The mirror was supposed to act as a conduit, reflecting the doppelganger's true form and drawing it into our trap. The air grew thick with tension as Marcus's chanting grew louder. Shadows flickered and danced around us, and I felt a cold presence creeping closer. Suddenly, the mirror in my hands began to vibrate, and a dark shape appeared in its reflection. The doppelganger stepped into the circle, its eyes glowing with malevolence. It looked exactly like me, but its smile was twisted, mocking. It tried to step forward, but the salt barrier held it back. "You think you can trap me?" it hissed, its voice a distorted echo of mine. "You are nothing without me." I held the mirror steady, focusing on its reflection. "I am not you," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "You are just a shadow." Marcus threw a handful of herbs into the air, and they burst into flames, surrounding the doppelganger in a ring of fire. It screamed, a horrible, guttural sound that echoed through the warehouse. The doppelganger's form began to waver, flickering like a faulty projection. Its eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something human, something almost sad. Then, with a final, agonized scream, it dissolved into smoke, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs. The warehouse fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting. Marcus and I collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. We had done it. The doppelganger was gone, banished for good. The next few days were a blur. I moved back into my apartment, feeling a strange sense of peace. The shadows seemed less threatening, the air less heavy. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But the experience had changed me. I was more cautious, more aware of the unseen forces that lurked in the dark corners of the world. I kept the mirror from the ritual, a reminder of what I had faced and overcome. And sometimes, late at night, I would catch my reflection and wonder if it was truly me looking back, or just another shadow waiting for its chance. The doppelganger was gone, but the memory of its presence lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between reality and the unknown. I had faced my darkest fears and survived, but I knew that some things could never be fully forgotten. Life went on, but I was always watching, always waiting, ready for whatever might come next. Because once you've seen your own dark reflection, you can never truly look away.